Hello, welcome to Friday, January 26th, 2018. Today we are doing notes on Alexander the Great. I wish so much I was there for this lesson. This lesson is one of my favorites. It's Alexander the Great. Pretty great guy. Before we start on our video notes, just a few things to be reminded of is number one, don't forget to write the title. Alexander the Great is the title. Number two, write down 4 to 5 points made in the video. And number three, don't forget to ask a question. And do I still need to say write your name on it? Please write your name on it. All right. To begin with, we're going to read the terms and names on the top right corner of 12.3 reading. The terms are catapult, which is a military machine that hurls objects. Many of you have probably seen a catapult in movies or have the idea of what it is. It's just something that throws something really, really far and is a machine. Alexander the Great, the definition, a great military leader of Macedonia who conquered a huge empire. The next word is Hellenistic. Hellenistic describes a culture blend of Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Indian styles or ways of life. This is a very large word, Hellenistic. Just know it refers to their culture. In the United States, we refer to the United States culture as the American culture. This is referring to their culture, Hellenistic. Alexandria, Alexander's capital in Egypt and the most famous Hellenistic city. It also housed a library and a lighthouse and was the headquarters of learning for quite some time. And we will talk about more of these during the video. All right, so Alexander the Great, these notes. The kingdom of Macedonia was ruled by Philip. At the age of 23, he started to plan an empire and build his empire. When he was a teenager, he happened to be held hostage in the Greek city-state of Thebes. Thebes was a Greek city-state in which he learned about military tactics and the use of armies. So when he became king of Macedonia, he decided to have a professional army instead of an army made up of citizens. A professional army is where people are hired to fight. They get paid to do fighting. It's their full-time job. In the United States, we have a professional army. People join the military. Their full-time job is the military. That's a professional army. So he created a professional army to train them, to make sure that they did what they were supposed to do, and they did it well. They also started using catapults and battering rams. Battering rams are used to open up doors or break down walls. And this helped attack walled cities and take them over. So he conquered lands in Macedonia first, around Macedonia, and then after he conquered those lands, he started to look at the Greek city-states. This started happening around 338 BC, and he started conquering Greek city-states. However, 2 years after that, in 336 BC, Philip was murdered, and his son, Alexander the Great, had to take over. Alexander the Great was 20 years old when he took over, and he was well trained when he grew up. He was well trained not only in military tactics, but also he was tutored by philosophers and other people who gave him a proper education. So he was a very smart and well-rounded king. So he wanted to continue his dad's legacy. He wanted to continue conquering lands. There was a place, again, Thebes. Thebes started to revolt. Alexander was not going to have it, and he just destroyed the city. This caused other Greek city-states to be very concerned that if they tried to rebel, what would Alexander the Great do? He'd probably do the same thing. They didn't want their city to be destroyed, so therefore people were a little bit afraid of Alexander because they didn't want their cities to be destroyed, so they behaved themselves. They wanted to make sure that they also were not destroyed. So he started to attack Persia. In attacking Persia and winning those attacks, he conquered Egypt. Egyptians did not like the Persians and their way of life, and so when Alexander the Great took over and he waltzes into Egypt, they liked him. They liked him a lot, and they even made him pharaoh. Now, if you remember, in Egypt, they believe that their pharaoh is also a god. So Alexander, to the Egyptians, becomes their god. But is he Egyptian? No, he's not. He's Macedonian. So the pharaohs after Alex become gods in Egypt, or God incarnate in Egypt, and they become the pharaohs. And they're no longer Egyptian pharaohs. They're Greek pharaohs. They're Macedonian pharaohs. So that's interesting to note, because Cleopatra, you might recognize her name, comes around. She's not Egyptian. She is actually Macedonian, a descendant of Alexander. In 331 BC, 5 years after Alexander started to conquer Persia, he fully conquered Persia. He was able to do it in just 5 years. It's pretty awesome. So his troops kind of got tired. They continued conquering all the way into India, and they got pretty tired. And so they asked and told Alexander, "We're going back home now." So they turned around. When they reached Babylon, which is about halfway through the Persian Empire, Alexander got sick, and he died at the age of 32 years old. After that, people debated as to what they should do with the large land that he conquered, and it ended up being divided into 3 sections, taken over by 3 powerful generals in this professional army that Alexander used to take over the land. So that being said, that's kind of where it ends in regards to Alexander conquering. But he had a very long-lasting impact on the Greek culture and what we know as the Greek culture today. He built cities as he conquered, and most of them, well, many of them, about 30, was named after him. He named after himself, and they were called Alexandria. So there are many cities called Alexandria. Now, today we know of one city that we all agree, like, yes, this is the Alexandria, but there are many others still in existence today that Alexandria was named for Alexander. Greek became the common language during this time. In our first lesson, we learned about how we have the alphabet from the Greeks. Because Greek became such a large and well-known language, this alphabet really took place and precedence in the culture of that day, which then impacted English and other languages getting a similar alphabet like the Greeks. The Greeks started conquering Persia. When they started to do that, they started to dress like Persians. They started to marry Persians, and this is called cultural diffusion. So they would take the Persian ideas, they would take the Macedonian or Greek ideas, they would put them together, and we have cultural diffusion, just like when other civilizations were conquered. We also not only just get two different kinds, Macedonian and Persian, but we have 4 different kinds of cultures that come together and create a brand new. This is cultural diffusion at its finest. We have Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian that all come together, and they mesh together, and they create this idea called an Hellenistic society, Hellenistic culture. Again, earlier today I defined Hellenistic as a culture. In the United States, we refer to the American culture. And I could ask you, describe the American culture. You could say, the American culture has technology. The American culture has nice clothes. The American culture cares about this, and this. They care about Facebook. They care about Instagram. Those types of things. And we can describe the American culture. The Hellenistic culture is similar, that it can be described, and it's a combination of 4 different cultures: Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian. During this time, they also started to share more information with each other. Information such as ideas and technologies. and they started spreading across this region, and they were able to come up with new ideas and new technologies. And this really, like, the head of this was in the city Alexandria. And this city specifically was the one in Egypt. And Alexandria was a very amazing place. It had a library that was very extensive. And also they had the Temple of the Muses. The Temple of the Muses is a place where the goddesses of the Muse kept a bunch of things. And it was artifacts, it was cool things of their day, and in a way it was like a museum. And that is actually where we get the term museum, is from the Temple of the Muses. They had historic and significant things in this place, and it became a museum. And that's where we get the term museum from. They also had a lighthouse. This was a very large lighthouse, and they did not have electricity, so this lighthouse was actually lit by fire. And the fire and the light spread for about 35 miles, which is a pretty significant distance. Going 60 miles an hour, that would take you 35 minutes to travel. So it is quite a distance that this lighthouse shined, and it was considered a 7 wonders of the world. So today you're going to be doing the 12.3 reading. Remember to do it as we practiced when I was there. I will be grading it, so make sure that you do your best. And I hope you all have a wonderful day and weekend. Bye.